What's up, everybody? This is John with Archer Film. When a filmmaker steals their entire style, content, and even actors from a master filmmaker, and then they become the master, well, that is fascinating to me. I'm talking about Paul Thomas Anderson and, of course, Martin Scorsese. We're going to start with Paul Thomas Anderson's first film, Hard Eight, or Sydney as he called it. And this little gangster movie, it came out in the time of Tarantino, and I first dismissed it as another quirky Tarantino ripoff. But it's actually really good, and there's some really cool performances. It's about an old-time crook who takes a loser under his wing and teaches him some scams in this small-town casino in Reno. So we got a casino as the backdrop, and we have these crooks, these thugs, that are trying to relate to each other. It's a very sad film. All the characters have like a sadness to them, which I found very interesting, including Gwyneth Paltrow, John C. Reilly, and of course, what I think turned him into a huge actor, Philip Baker Hall. So if you watch that movie, or even the trailer for that movie, you see these whip pans and these quick push-in shots and zooms. That's kind of what PTA becomes known for, this sort of electric camera work that keeps your eyes busy and keeps you interested. And he does that for the first few films of his, the whip pans and the quick zooms and these tracking shots, and there's an electricity, to the movement of his camera, and it keeps you, wanting to sort of watch his movies as everything unfolds. Now, Scorsese used that technique in a lot of his early films, especially in his gangster stuff, including Goodfellas and Casino. Again, Casino takes place in a casino. It's about a bunch of crooks, and it has this electric feel. It's a 3-hour movie that does not feel like it because of the camera work. It's very quick, just like what Paul Thomas Anderson uses in Hard Eight. The next, we have the absolute ripoff of a shot in Paul Thomas Anderson's follow-up film, Boogie Nights. Of course, it is a masterpiece. Star turns by everybody in it, honestly. But that opening shot of Boogie Nights, where it goes into the club in Reseda and goes around to all the tables, and we hear people talking, it basically introduces all the main characters of the film. That is impressive to me, but the shot is not nearly as impressive as the Copa shot in Goodfellas. So the Copa shot in Goodfellas, it tracks Ray Liotta as they go into the club, go down the stairs, through the kitchen, through the whole place, and then to their table. Now, what's more impressive about the Scorsese shot is it's longer, and you're dealing with so much action and all the people around. There's so much going on. Now, in the Boogie Nights one, it's interesting, and of course we meet all the characters, which is fantastic, but it's not nearly as impressive because of the range of things going on in the background. So those two shots, an absolute ripoff, But again, Boogie Nights is an absolute masterpiece as well. And we see a lot of the same camera work, the whip pans and stuff like that. So that gives it a sense of energy. So again, with Boogie Nights, same thing as Casino, you have a 3-hour movie that doesn't feel like it. The only thing is, although great performances in Casino, in Boogie Nights, you have some absolute incredible performances, and there's just this sadness to that movie. It's very well done, and the depth of it kind of proved that PTA was a force to be reckoned with. All right, next we have this. I'm going to skip Magnolia because I'm not sure Scorsese has anything similar. Magnolia is this sprawling human drama that takes place in the valley with a little magical realism sprinkled in. And I know that Scorsese has a lot of epics. They're usually like gangster or historical stuff, and there's nothing really similar, like a contemporary human epic. So I'm just going to kind of skip over those. But there is a lot of the overhead light shots that are very similar to what Scorsese does in Magnolia, and of course the whip pans and things like that. Now, thanks to the critics opining that Paul Thomas Anderson couldn't make a movie under 3 hours, he goes off and does Punch Drunk Love. Again, another masterpiece. It's an absolute beautiful film. And again, with the familiar, filmmaking style, this time he's using a comedic actor in a largely serious role, in my opinion, is Adam Sandler's greatest performance ever. It's dark, it's quirky. He gives this sense of humanism to his character. It is fantastic. Now, on the surface, I was thinking maybe like Scorsese's King of Comedy, where Jerry Lewis takes a fantastic turn in that. But I'm thinking more like After Hours. If you've never seen Scorsese's After Hours, it is this weird, quirky, like one night in the life of this guy played by Griffin Dunn, who he's a lonely guy who gets caught up with these like small-time criminals and all these weird happenings all in the middle of the night in New York. And so, it's a very weird, quirky movie, but it's got meaning to it. And by the end, we get a sense of like, oh, this was not just a bunch of random stuff. And I think it's kind of the same thing with Punch Drunk Love. It's, Barry Egan, Adam Sandler's character, a lonely, normal guy, seeking human connection, gets caught up in this sort of underworld of small-time crooks and weirdos, and all this stuff happens. So, again, very similar in the way they're sort of presented. I'm also going to skip Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master. I don't think if Scorsese has anything close to that. Maybe like The Aviator in terms of historical epic with a powerful lead, I guess. Maybe. I don't know. But here's the thing. One of my favorite comparisons. We got two more major ones, but this is one of my favorite ones. Now, my favorite Scorsese film is probably The Age of Innocence. It is just so beautiful. It's very subtle, meaningful. It's got sumptuous cinematography and great, subtle, heartbreaking performances by Daniel Day-Lewis, Winona Ryder, Michelle Pfeiffer. It's about sort of class and manners, and it's a period piece, but I didn't already say that. And I loved it. It's fantastic. It makes you want to watch it a couple times to think, like, well, what was this about? There's just a lot going on there. And of course, Paul Thomas Anderson makes his version of it in The Phantom Thread, which is an absolute masterpiece once again. And he's using the same actor that Scorsese used in the lead, in Daniel Day-Lewis, which he gives an incredible performance. It's fantastic. And if you've not seen Phantom Thread, again, it's very subtle. It's about love. It's about being an artist and what that means. It's also about class. There's just some great imagery in it, great performances. And once again, I loved it, but very similar to The Age of Innocence. Now, here's the other cool thing, okay? Now, I know that Phantom Thread came after this movie, but this is the main one that I wanted to compare anyway. So, Paul Thomas Anderson makes There Will Be Blood. Again, another masterpiece from him, one of the greatest films of all time, in my opinion, with arguably two of the greatest performances ever, definitely one of them in Daniel Day-Lewis. And again, There Will Be Blood, shot incredibly. The cinematography, I think it's Robert Elswit, is absolutely beautiful. And the meaning behind this, he's dealing with capitalism. He's dealing with America in its early stages and what it means to succeed in America as a capitalist, and of course, oil. It's fantastic. If you've not seen that, see that movie. Paul Dano obviously kills it as well. But what's interesting about that is last year, Scorsese makes himself a little masterpiece dealing with the same subject matter, called Killers of the Flower Moon. We got oil, we have capitalism in its early stages, we have a young America. What was more interesting content-wise was I had never seen a movie about the Osage Indians with all this wealth and then these people coming to steal it. So I thought that was brilliant. We've seen lots of oil movies, but I've never seen anything like that. So that, I think, gives Scorsese the upper hand in those two films. But what makes There Will Be Blood even better is the performances are just so mind-bogglingly good. So yeah, there we go. We have these two filmmakers, and in these two films, the last two that I mentioned, we have less of the whip pans and the zooms and the frenetic energy. We have more patience with the shots. They let the shots unfold. They let the performances speak for themselves. They let the subtlety in the characters do what they have to do. They let the storytelling unfold. These are two patient master filmmakers at this point. They're less concerned about entertaining the audience and keeping everyone's attention and more about telling an engaging story that is chock full of meaning. So that was interesting to me, is watching where Paul Thomas Anderson started and where he went. He always had this human element to his films, this engaging human story at the center of all of his films, but his filmmaking style became more confident and patient as he got older, especially in dealing with these two. Now, Paul Thomas Anderson has a couple other movies, Inherent Vice and Licorice Pizza. I thought they were both great. I'm not really going to get into them. One of them's an adaptation, and one of them is, just kind of the historical Hollywood film, which I liked it. It was really good, very funny. And of course, Scorsese's got about 20 years worth of other movies, lots of gangster stuff, some crime stuff, a couple horror stuff thrown in the mix, which are all good. It's just that there's not really any more comparison between the two. So it's very interesting to me. And it's funny how, they say that like when you're just coming up as an artist, what you want to do is you want to copy the best. If you play piano, you want to play Mozart, you want to play Rachmaninoff, you want to play Brahms, you want to play these things over and over and over, and then you can mimic them, and then eventually you find your own style. It's the same as any other art, including filmmaking. And of course, Paul Thomas Anderson was smart enough to steal from the best until his own style sort of materialized. And now he's just an absolute master, to where, in my opinion, I feel like Scorsese took from him with Killers of the Flower Moon. But anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.